Tom. That's the standings. Tom's not here this week. We've managed to go from 4 people last episode to 2 people this episode. So hopefully next week we'll be back on track with just 3 again. Tom had some commitments that he can record with us tonight. So anyway, we're going to be going over the regular sort of stuff. We're going to look at Game of the Week and what we thought Game of the Week should be. We're going to go over players that impressed, again like normal, and then we're just going to hopefully, maybe this week, we're going to get onto the fabled statistics part of the podcast, but probably not. So I'll have to run by the statistics of how likely it is that we're going to do the statistics part on the podcast. So yeah. Anyway, so we're going to start off. I mean, we might as well have a quick look at the table while we're here then, because we've got first time we're going to actually see, I suppose, the standings with like the video recording. So currently we've got G2, who are currently 5-0, Schalke 5-1. Their only game they've dropped to G2. Vitality 5-1.
Who only dropped to Schalke?
He only dropped to Schalke, but they haven't played G2 yet. So
no. Is that one of the ones next week? I think.
Yes, I think
we
so.
discussed that.
Yes, it is actually. It's on the Friday.
Yeah.
Misfits 4-2, which is interesting. Spliced 3-3, Excel 2-4, Origin 2-4, SK 2-4. Then we've got the dregs of Fnatic 1-5, and unfortunately Rogue going 0-6. And I think we probably want to. I want to start off and preface this. I don't know if you want to disagree with me on this, but I think that the scoreboard is not necessarily an indictment of skill or the necessary rankings of the team at this point. All the teams, maybe I think each team looks probably better than their standings indicate, which I know is technically impossible.
No, that is impossible.
Yeah, so technically impossible. But if you'd have swapped any of the teams to me in this leaderboard, the top, like the upper halves would look right if you watch some of their gameplay. I think.
So I think currently the top 5 teams on the leaderboard are the 5 that have performed best in the first 5 weeks. And I mean that does kind of sound obvious, but if you take results out of it and just look at how well they've played, I think I would still pick these 5 as the top 5.
Yeah.
And then the bottom 5, the same. So
yeah, and I suppose what I mean more is that comparatively to other years, the skill gap between the bottom and the top is not as great, I think.
I agree with that. I mean, it's hard to tell completely because I mean, the skill gap between the absolute top and the absolute bottom, I don't think anyone would even argue that Rogue would compete with G2 over a period of time for the best team. So what I'm basically saying is, if they played each other, it's quite possible Rogue could win. It's best of 1, anything can happen. But no one would argue that Rogue is the better team than G2 right now.
But I think maybe let's think back to last split and H2K with their awful run.
Yes.
Would you say that H2K would have ever had a chance of beating like Fnatic on their like very strong split?
No.
But so basically, really. How would your comparison be between like Rogue being at the bottom and people like H2K from last split?
We still have to remember that this is like 3 weeks in.
Yeah.
So nothing is like set in stone at all. Like there's so much still to play. But at the same time, I still think that after 6 games, it does kind of give you a indication. It doesn't tell you flat out how good teams are, but it like nudges you and says, oh, this team are relatively alright, or this team are not that good. And for me, Rogue have clearly been the worst team in the league, and I don't think comparing it to last split is fair, just considering how different like the structure of the teams are and how this franchising has brought in like the equaling of teams across the board. So for me, Rogue is a very weak team at the moment, and that's why they are down there in the tables.
Yeah, I think it's fair, certainly fair to say, but obviously, I suppose it's just interesting to compare it to years before.
Yeah.
And we don't really dig too much into the standings. There's nothing overly surprising to us, except for I think Fnatic ducking a bit. But 3 of the new teams.
I mean, yeah, I was just on that side note to that. I was actually, I think when we did our episode 0, I put Schalke bottom half, and so I would say that is surprising for me. I've been so incredibly impressed by Schalke so far this split, and I think they thoroughly deserve to be 5-1 at the moment. I think
definitely.
their loss to G2 was a stomp. Fair enough, they got wrecked. That's their one loss. But their 5 other wins have been completely deserved. Like they have looked the better team easily in all of those 5 games.
See,
and sorry, Karen.
I'm really interested because you obviously mentioned that they lost to G2, but I just want to think back to that game. Like G2 looked, like I know it's only been 2 weeks or so, but G2 looked far more in form weeks 1 and 2. Well, even just week 1 than they do now. Like they've dropped. You can see when the coach goes on stage as well, but you just watch the games. They were 4 behind in almost every game, and they just rely on individual skill to just win the game.
If I actually think right now at this moment that Schalke are the best team in the league.
Possibly, yeah.
I think that's my opinion, and fair enough they lost to G2. That was week 1. That could have been week 1 nerves. That could have been week 1 like upset. That could, as in not the player, as in could have been, you know what I mean. But
week 1 upset.
For me, out of just the last 2 weeks and a kind of overall, looking at it from an overall point of view, I would actually say that Schalke are the strongest team in the league, and I do believe that Upset and Ignar are the strongest bot lane right now in the league as well. And I think that is not really even close. I think they are amazing. I just think they're great. So that's my personal opinion. And I think Vitality it's really interesting because they're 5-1, but at the same time, their 1 they lost was not a stomp, and they kind of threw that at Baron a bit. That was the first, was it the first game? No, it was like the second game.
No, I think it was their first. Their
first game.
Yeah.
And it might have been the second overall or third overall or something. And they were even winning that game. Yeah. And then in some of their wins, they looked like they should have lost, especially this week. I imagine. We might come into that later, but so they're kind of. They win games when they shouldn't. They lose games when they shouldn't. But I also feel like 5-1 is pretty fair, maybe a bit over. I would definitely say they're not as strong as Schalke, who are sitting on the same score as them. But at the same time, they did beat Misfits, who are below them. So I think 5-1 is flattering, but at the same point, 4-2 would maybe be... I'd say maybe 4-2 is a bit fairer, but at the same time, they're definitely a strong team in the league right now.
Yeah, definitely. I suppose we're gonna move on from that for now because I want to dive into the actual individual games. So we're gonna start off with game of the week, and Riot's game of the week this week was Origin versus Vitality at the end of day 1. Now that was it's a weird game because it seemed to kind of mirror what we know about Vitality, and they played, and I've heard this phrase thrown around a lot on the broadcast as well. They played so Vitality in the way they play. Like they've coined their own style, and they managed to make it work. And it was basically textbook Vitality. Like as much as I joke about it, it really looked like them and the way they like to play in that game. But
like if someone asked me how this game was going to go before the game, and then I would have pretty much said how it ended up going.
Yeah,
because I did think Vitality were the stronger team going in by by some margin, not massive but noticeable. And I mean, I think that actually Nuke Duck pretty much kind of just beat Jizuka in the mid lane. Like Jizuka didn't get ahead. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, he has a winning matchup with Malzahar though.
Yeah.
But this is the
But at
thing.
the same time, like Jizuke roamed a bit, like helped the jungler, like nothing happened, like nothing good, and he was a bit behind. But I mean, the side lanes won, and Mowgli had that 3-man kick on that
Yeah.
mid-game team fight, which was pretty cool
That's very cool.
around the side. So again, Cabo was a god again.
Yeah.
I've been so I think we've mentioned this
Yeah.
at least once before. So impressed by Cabochard this year. Yeah, he just seems to be doing stuff like.
Yeah.
I mean,
great.
so they give him favourable matchups, and it's like all right saying that okay, he wins lane because he has favourable matchups, but you still have to play it out well, and like he's done that. I think almost every game he's had that favourable matchup. He's managed to take at least the lead he's managed to do at least the lead you'd expect, and usually more on top of that. So I think he's done very well.
Yep, definitely. But I just want to go back to like that kick from Mowgli, by the way, because
Yeah.
it was awesome in terms of the way it looked, the way it was set up, like their vision denial.
Yep.
But I don't think it wasn't that significant. So
Well,
I
they
think
won
they
the
got
team
Mithy
fight
out
off
of it, and they didn't convert anything off of it, and they should have got a lot more. If I watched Mike Check yesterday actually, and I heard you can hear him shouting, I get kick, I get kick on three, I get kick on three. So they obviously intended to get a lot more from it,
Yeah.
and they only got one on the support who was pretty much going to die anyway there. So like I just wanted to, I don't know how you feel about it, but I just felt like it was really cool to watch.
Yeah.
But plays like that, like mechanically skilled plays, get overhyped a lot, whereas like presence of mind plays often don't.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's like saying it's overhyped might be a bit of a disservice because it's really cool, and whether it actually leads to the win is almost irrelevant.
Yeah.
If
But-
that makes sense. As a spectator, I just love to watch that because I've tried releasing and failed multiple times. So just seeing it do really well, like you
Yeah.
could see when they did the vision toggle, they had no idea he was there. He came in round, and like on another day, that could have also been a
Yeah.
team fight which they got an ace.
That's
so
true.
so even though they didn't get it, didn't take the massive lead off it this time, doesn't take away from the fact that it actually could have given them something as
Yeah.
well.
I think, see, because it's this thing. That's fine. I take your point on that, but I remember particularly Jizuke. He's not very fed LeBlanc. Like the whole objective of LeBlanc is to smash your lane, snowball, and just run the game out of control. But Jizuke has some kind of like magic around him where he creates ridiculous amount of pressure. And
Yes.
when I'm watching, I watched through how he uses mana, and he plays as if he has like full mana when he has like one rotation of spells left, and it's so brave. And there was a time, so he was top lane against Alfari. Is definitely Alfari, because in my mind at that point, there's no way like a 1.5 item LeBlanc should kill a 1.5 item Scion with like X amount of health, and he basically just ran at him. Cycled through about 4 rotations of spells and solo killed him while I think they had Baron and they were split pushing or whatever, and it just really surprised me that like because I would never have even thought to go for that play, and I don't know hardly any other players that would go for a similar play, which is
Yeah,
interesting
I
because I
mean-
feel like that really swung the game and it was completely glossed over. He's just like,
Yeah.
oh, LeBlanc, LeBlanc does LeBlanc things, but I mean he killed a Scion. Like it's really, I think it was, I can't quite remember the exact scenario. I think someone else was there and he sort of skirted around their CC to just basically kill the Scion in front of them. So I thought that was really impressive as well. But
For me, Jizuka is the second best mid laner in the league right now. I don't think anyone can argue Caps. I mean, he's just so good.
yeah,
But I mean, it's just utter confidence and self belief that just shows, like, emanates from him completely.
yeah,
And at the same time, he is like a mechanical god. So, like, even though you said he wasn't like 7-0 LeBlanc, he still played like it, which
yeah.
is kind of impressive at the same time. Not at the same time, impressive. Like,
Yeah, it's interesting because we talked last week about whether we thought he was back or not, and how he had a rough start to the split. But I really
Yeah.
think that it was more on the champions he's played, and it just had a couple of unlucky games. But
Yeah.
every
I mean,
game they play more, and they show something more daring, or just not necessarily even the picks, but the way they play and the more confidence they get together. Because I mean, at the end of the day, swapping a jungler out is a big deal, and they have to readjust to it, and you can see the sort of synergy kind of getting back together.
so for me, this is where I kind of so a lot of, especially in weeks 1 and 2, were picking the Lissandra and Galio, and like Vitality did that, like, or at least they picked the Galio, I think, week 1, and then they just kind of said, wait, no, we have this player who is better when we don't use these meta picks and put him on something game changing.
Mm-hmm.
So they decided to do that, and I think it's really important for the state of the game when you have a player like Jizuke and you don't have to put him on something he doesn't want to be on. If he is good enough, he can play these game-changing champions. Like, the champions are at least good enough for someone like Jizuke to pick up and just win. And I'm not saying he had the best week this week.
No,
'Cause even
that's the best bit.
Yeah,
honestly.
but at the same time, he wasn't bad, and he still managed to do stuff. Like,
Yeah.
I just talked
Because-
briefly about his against Rogue. Like, he was down, got caught, but he was miles ahead in CS. Like, he was not losing big time. He was just dying a bit. If that makes sense.
Yeah, but that's part of the thing. That's why I think it's even more impressive is the fact that like anybody can potentially play against a bad team or a bad player in the mid lane, get ahead and carry their team. Like not anybody, but anybody in the Premier League out of our caliber of mid laners. I think that it is normal for people to run away with games at this point. But the more impressive part of it is he doesn't even have to still look that good, which is really impressive. So, unless you got anything else to say on that, I want to just ask, like, how do you think this should have been game of the week? Like, we'll get on to what we thought game of the week should have been, but
I understand. I was just having a look down the. So this week, no games really stood out to me as like big hitters against big hitters.
Yeah.
I mean, you can always argue like Misfits, Fnatic, but at this point, Fnatic have been struggling, like quite clearly. So can you really say that there's evidence to put that as game of the week? That's definitely debatable.
But to be fair, so have Misfits. So
yeah, but at the same
there's a
time, I think they like to choose teams that are like relatively well even. I mean, Origin have not been performing to the same standard as Vitality, but they've been doing something.
See, the bit that surprised me most that they didn't pick Misfits versus Fnatic is the fact that Soaz and Bwipo have this obvious rivalry of being on the same team, and they did do a segment on it, and they were talking about the rivalry in the top lane, but I feel like surely that's cause for a game of the week, because as I mentioned to you before we went live, so Vitality and Origin have already been both been part of separate game of the weeks already, and in weeks 1 and week 2, and now in week 3 they're both part of it again. And I'm just kind of wondering like how much weight they're going to give to Origin just because they are the returning team, because they have to consider that they're not even like there's no fragment of the team that exists from before they left the league. They've gone through 3 full different iterations. The Peke era with Mithy, Niels at the time, Soaz and Amazing. They went through that weird period with Nahyun, Sartorius, and I can't even remember the rest. Syncroft as well. Like these just names that just completely disappeared from almost. Well, that I think some of those guys are still playing in different leagues, but from the LEC at least, they've just completely disappeared. And now they took a year out, and now they've got a completely new roster again. No, like the only sort of remnant of it is Mithy, but with a completely new team, after going to a different region. So
I mean, we do have to remember it is like it's not the same organization, kind of really.
Yeah.
It's like
that's my.
Was they called Astralis?
Astralis,
the team
yeah,
that
CS:GO.
technically, like their like parent company owns it, and Origin's like just really the franchise front. It's not really like the same behind the team. It's not the same as well as the team
Yeah,
itself.
and that's my point as to I'm wondering why Riot is still. I mean, again, it's still
I
only
mean,
three
the
weeks
name is the
in, but to
name.
have
It's
them
like
out
iconic.
2 out of 3 weeks, to be involved out in 2 out of 3 weeks of Game of the Week, based on their history, is starting to get a little dry for me, and that's coming from
I
an
agree.
Origin
I
fan.
agree. I actually think, on fair reflection, that Misfits Fnatic would have been the best game of the week, looking at the 10 games. But I also want to have a small, like, almost could have said Splice Shulker, because at the start of the week they're both 3-1.
Yeah,
But I think people were looking at the wins they had and noticing the Shulker's wins were slightly more significant than than Splice's wins.
yeah.
So I
Well, that
think even though they had the same scoreline, people kind of realized they weren't even in skill.
yeah. Well, let's say we'll put this one to the rest in terms of Vitality and Origin because I want to move on to what we thought Game of the Week was, and you mentioned Splice versus Schalke, and that
Yes.
was what I considered Game of the Week when I watched it.
Okay.
Not for any particular reason, but I've said a lot in the past that, but they feel like the same team, just
Yeah.
because they've swapped top laners. Did you see that tweet actually I put
Yeah.
in the podcast chat? So Odo Amne tweeted that Upset called him Vizicachi mid game at some point, and this is what I've always said is that Odo Amne and Vizicachi feel like the same player. Although
Yeah.
actually it's an interesting thing because this split I actually feel like my opinions changed on that, and I think I should probably say that now because Vizicachi has played a lot of like these tanky top laners like Ornn and Sion. We played Ornn this week for the first time, but things
Yeah.
like the Ornn, the Sion. I think he's played I don't know if he's played Poppy yet, but he likes to play these more reserve things. But
I
Odo
think
Amne's
so.
played things like Kennen and Ryze
Yeah.
almost every game. So I feel like they are starting to split apart, and Odo Amne is getting a little bit more freedom in this team. But that being said, overall, again, I'm looking similar as I've coined them, top laners. Similar in terms of the fact that both rookies in the mid lane and very skilled supports that are very mechanically strong and they've been praised in the past, and both the AD carries are pretty much rocks for their team. So this was my game of the week. I enjoyed watching it. It was less because I was rooting for Splice. It was less fun to watch them lose because they had a real struggle with their AD carry champion
I
pool.
just want to bring you up on the rock thing with the AD carries and say for me at this point Upset is more than just the rock. If
Yeah,
that makes sense.
that's
For
true.
me, he's become like the star man. Where I don't want to say franchise player. That term it just haunts me at the moment. But,
Yeah, the franchise player.
but I look at that team and I think, okay, Aberdage's been doing all right. I mean, he's a rookie, you can't expect much. Odoamne's doing pretty good. He's playing these kind of like skill top laners. He's doing what he needs to do, big time, whatever. Memento is doing Memento things. He's been impressive, but not the standout jungler for me. And I just look at this bot lane and I see Upset and Ignar. And I mentioned earlier that I've just been so thoroughly impressed by them. It's like, I don't know, like, it's hard to separate them and say, oh, Upset and
Which
Ignar,
one's
blah,
better?
blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, I feel like Upset is performing to a level above most of the AD carries, and I definitely think it's at least a level above Kobe at the moment. I
Yeah,
understand Kobe is a rock, but for me, Upset is like more than that
yeah.
rock. It's like star
Well,
man.
so obviously the week before they had that really crazy play on Reckless. So Reckless was playing Severe, and they were playing Thresh and Kai'Sa.
Kai'Sa.
I just saw this on Twitter before I came on. That's why I thought about it. But that one where they both lined the skill shots and knocked off
Yeah.
Reckless's spell shield. That kind of summarizes their lane. Like they're so
Yeah.
in sync, and they work with each other so well. I don't think you can necessarily say which one is outperforming the other. Like that's the beauty of a good bot lane.
Yeah,
They are the bot lane,
exactly.
not like
They are together.
Yeah, not that you could say Upset's so good, and Ignar's pretty good as well. So they can, they're both incredible at this point. And it's interesting because obviously Kobe is someone that I think is very skilled. Like I think he's almost always looked good throughout his career, and even in the game they lost on a pick that's not favourable, he still looked okay. But like I think the biggest issue was the draft for them. So they basically just built a meat shield front line for Kobe. So they had Aatrox, Sejuani, Ornn, and Braum, because every other AD carry got banned out. They banned the Lucian, so they didn't have any choice in that. Upset took the Ezreal, and Schalke also banned Kai'Sa and Vayne. So really, I think as a pick, Varus is definitely probably the right sort of choice to go for. I can't really think of anything else that would even be suitable.
In their next game against, was it G2? I can't remember.
Yeah, G2.
They played the Victor in the bot lane, and
similar scenario.
For me, I wasn't impressed really. They did kind of lose bot pretty. I mean, Lucian Pyke just have so much kill pressure.
They had a lot of other problems in that game.
Yeah.
To be fair.
I mean, I understand that too, but Vizicachi was doing I thought pretty well in that game against the Shen. Like he was even with Wonder pretty much throughout and was getting. I mean, he got a triple kill at one point, I think.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing. The map was going well, but Ryze and Alistar were just.
Yeah.
It was a lot of getting caught out or taking weird fights.
The thing is, we know Kobe is a good ADC, as you said, rock solid player, and you're playing the best team arguably in the league, and it's don't change anything for this game. And that's my opinion.
Something I noticed that is very good for G2 though, because Victor into Lucian is actually a very, very strong matchup. However, the thing that I noticed when I was watching the game is that Perk started Corrupting Potion and Max the W in lane. Now, this is something that I'd watched in the LCK from Griffin on Viper, or Viper on Griffin, and in this exact same matchup, and it was explained by Papa Smithy, and he said that you don't need to get in range of the Victor to actually still poke him and trade him, because your W obviously does that for you. You take the Corrupting Potion to just basically shove the lane in, and then once you're out of potion stacks, you're back to base, you get whatever item components you can actually start winning the lane at some point. And that's basically what ended up happening. And then they kind of just had this kind of comp with just endless aggression, and and Splyce didn't have enough consistent damage, which is interesting because Kobe always plays someone with consistent damage, and in this game there were only 2 AD carries banned or taken away, so Perks took the Lucian and Ezreal was banned. So he actually had a full champion pool to pick from. Could have taken Severe, could have taken Kai'Sa. I think personally, looking at their comp, Kai'Sa would have been very nice to have a bit of a sustained damage on the back line. But but because I don't really want to focus too much on that game, but what I want to more look at is and something I mentioned about the Schalke versus Splyce game is in terms of the rookie. Humanoid didn't have a good week this week. He went 1-3 against Schalke, and then 1-7 against G2, which is interesting because Abbedagge, the other rookie, went 4-1 on the Blanc. Now, obviously, it's going to be skewed because one beat the other, but I think this is something I mentioned last week, is that Abbedagge needs to show up, not solo carry a game, but he needs to show us that he's got confidence. Every mid laner ever that's been good has confidence. They don't have to be a mechanical god. Mechanics honestly come with the degree of discipline to be able to know when to do it, the confidence to do it, and then obviously the skill to do it. And I think any player that's got into the LEC will have the skill to do it. The discipline comes through having a good team around you so you can choose when to do it, and then it's the confidence that's down to the player. And I think Abbedagge showed up more than Humanoid for sure this week, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it's still hard to tell, for me. And not between the two, just the fact that, so they pretty much beat Splyce big time, right? And then you're on LeBlanc, so it's like your stats look really good
But he had
because
a
you're
very
kind
strong laning phase as well.
yeah, I understand that as well. So I that was for me it was like impressive, but not oh my god, Avadaga genius kind of
Yeah,
thing.
but that again, yeah. So I still think that will come with time. But we
Yeah,
need to start seeing players like him not default to Lissandra every game.
yeah,
Because there's
and then
nothing wrong with Lissandra,
yeah,
but you pick it when you're like, we don't really. Actually, interesting enough, I'm just looking here. Splice banned it, so
okay,
um,
that is interesting.
yeah,
That's also annoying, I imagine, when you ban it something and then they pick LeBlanc, significantly harder champion to
yeah.
pull
I mean,
off. And
Lissandra's great
does a
into
great job.
LeBlanc, so they obviously banned it from Humanoid, who's also played a lot of Lissandra. Would have been a good matchup for him. So it's a very strange one. I think that in terms of like what we take away from it, I don't think Splice came off looking too bad from that game. It
No,
was just Schalke looked more. It sort of pitted Schalke like more solidly above them. I think for me,
yeah.
rather
Well, for
than
me,
damaging
Splice had
Splices.
the toughest possible week. They played Shock and G2,
Yeah, yeah. By the
and
standings, definitely.
although you can argue that um that's an O2 week for them, like they could play all right and have an O2 week. For me, they didn't show anything really. They I mean they played like fine, I guess, but they didn't put up a fight really in the games.
Yeah. No.
And so last week they went 2-0, but it was against much weaker opposition. This week they went 0-2 and it was against much stronger opposition. So neither week really tells us too much.
Yeah.
We want to see them playing the other teams like so Misfits will be a big game for them because they're only one win ahead, and then I think teams below them. If they want to evolve into a team that's a good team rather than a team that's just always on the cusp of playoffs, and they need to be like putting up fights against strong teams at least, and then solidly beating teams like who are worse than them. So you can't really tell from me from this week whether Splice or how good Splice are just from their performance this week.
I think that's fair. Yeah. So move on to your game of the week. What did you think?
I don't know whether this is a good enough reason, but I'm just gonna say the XL Misfits because it was a big upset at the time,
Yeah.
and at the same time they played really well, and
Yeah.
I was impressed heavily by XL and Expect on that Urgot
Yeah.
with that Baron steal into kill.
What a
Was
guy. I love Expect.
that was
He
great.
makes
That
me
was
so
so
happy.
good. It was like that just reminds me on why he was on one of the most successful teams of all time in EU.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
What a pickup.
yeah,
But,
as he just won like big time, and then like the rest of the team were doing more than great.
Yep.
And they just beat out the team that at the time were 3-1
Yeah.
and looking like one of the strongest teams.
Yeah.
So for no other reason than I like a good underdog story, and they pulled it off big time. That's why I picked XL Big Misfits.
Yeah, I'm starting to become a bit of a fan of XL actually. Obviously, like UK.
All turning into Tom.
Yeah. He's a genius.
XL
He's ahead of his
second.
time. But I always have to completely swallow my pride. That was just coincidence that I swallowed there. But Cadril every week is looking more and more impressive, and
Yeah.
like because I watched Mic Check yesterday, and I listened to their comms, and he's like decisive. He's the strong voice in their shot calling in team fights. He knows what he's doing, and I also watched a pre-game interview between him and Maxlaw,
Oh, I saw that as
and
well.
Maxwell being so cocky, like, of course I'm gonna
Yeah.
win. I'm the king of the jungle, baby. Like, okay. And he just sort of, he looks at him and he was just like, he didn't say anything. He was like, okay, yeah, like whatever. And then he actually like, we kind of showed him up a bit, and that's really interesting to show that he's obviously working on himself as a player very well, and he's being quietly confident about himself, and he's doing like his shot calling is incredible. People like Kasing is always going to be good, and Expect is always going to be good, and it's just the unknown of Jeskla, and every game I watch him, I'm getting more and more impressed by him as well, because he's starting to not starting. He's obviously got very good positioning. He's got some decent players in terms of like experience around him, and he just seems to look better and better every game he plays. So he's probably one of these players where you get more experience with him, and he's going to start looking like a really formidable opponent, and hopefully XL can start some kind of upward trend.
I mean, if Fnatic don't get better, then I expect XL to thoroughly be fighting for that playoff spot, if not just making it. Because, or even if Fnatic do get better, depending on how better they get, I think there are definitely teams worse than XL in the league right now.
Yeah.
And I think they also had that extremely close game against G2, if you remember back last week.
That's why I think people hold them.
So far in the last 3 of their last 4 games, or maybe their last 3 games, they played like Schalke, which they played day 2 yesterday, Misfits and G2, and quite frankly, they only went 1-2, but at the same time, that's 3 of the best teams in the league, and they beat Misfits big time. They only just lost to G2, and the Schalke game wasn't like a thrashing. I mean, they did all right. XL did well in that game, but I do have to say in the Schalke game that I'm not liking the Rumble pick at the moment.
No.
I think it's the second time that Expect has played it.
I thought
and
that when it came out.
Can't get on grips with it. It doesn't seem to do well in lane. It doesn't seem to do well mid game, which was like a previous big spike for Rumble.
Yeah.
And then once you get to late game, you're like pretty useless.
Yeah,
so.
It's a weird thing where the current meta is generally about lane dominance and jungle skirmishing. I mean, theoretically, Rumble ult with jungle skirmishing is quite easy, but you compare it to something like an Urgot or a Jace that's quite prevalent at the minute, or Sion. Like, there's just no real reason to pick it unless they're all banned away. Like, when I see Expect on Sion, I'm having a good time.
They did ban Urgot and Sion.
Yeah, so this is.
Game.
So maybe.
But I just can't see it as a top tier pick at the moment.
I'm struggling to see what else you would pick in that scenario, but I also agree that Rumble he kind of has no strength in the current meta, and there's a reason why nobody else is picking him, and I don't think.
I think Huni played him once in the LCS, if I remember.
This week? I don't remember seeing it.
I think it was first
watching,
week.
To be fair, so.
I think it was first week, but I can't remember if he won that game because I don't really care. But for me, that's just not working out because they played it earlier. I think it was week 1 as well, and I remember just being caught constantly on the sidelines.
So, alright, in terms of like being caught, maybe not the same sort of vein, but how do you think your perception of Forbidden is after this week? Because he's somebody in the past that I've said really, he's could be a liability on this team.
So first game was the XL game.
Yep.
That was the game we were on about. I remember now. And I mean, he got wrecked, as did the rest of the team, pretty much. Didn't do much. Just kind of died a bit, lost. Second game
is LeBlanc game.
Was the LeBlanc,
which is interesting because impressive. that was his champion. He kind of popularized it.
So this is what so far what I've seen from Forbidden is strong when the team's strong, not strong when the team's not strong.
Exactly.
And that doesn't show outstanding performance. I mean, it's better than being not strong when the team's strong, not strong when the team's not strong. But he's like, for example, we've seen games I know it's always horrible to compare people to Caps, but like Caps is the player where he can play well when the team's not playing well. We even saw Nemesis play all right when his team was not playing that well.
That game was very close to turning, I think.
Which one?
The Fnatic versus Misfits one, where Forbidden had a good LeBlanc game. His laning
really? I just didn't.
The thing is, so the way I was watching this with, I think, Ollie again as well, and I said, Fnatic are getting really strong. Like they've got a really good scaling comp. The like
If they just draft like three
they
lanes,
drafted
end up
every lane was a
losing.
losing lane,
Yeah, which
and
doesn't work in this meta.
yeah. But I said obviously the scaling is important to consider, but there comes a point where it's too late, and basically that's what happened in that game. But there was a couple
Yeah.
of times where they sort of like Misfits dove turrets, and they got like I think they literally only got like yeah they got 2 kills in the game. But those 2 kills, I'm like, well that's it. Like they're going to defend off that, and unfortunately it never happened. But you know that could have been very close to a throw if
Yeah,
Misfits
so
weren't on the
people
right board.
people can look at the results of this game and say, "Oh, Misfits thrashed Fnatic,"
Yeah,
but what they don't realize is that if Fnatic had played a little bit better and got to 40 minutes, it becomes an even game regardless of the scoreline.
and it was
This could-
close to doing that. Like Fnatic didn't look awful. You have 5 losing lanes. Like there's not really a lot you can do.
5 lanes,
Well, jungle technically it's losing.
5
matchup
losing
as well.
lanes.
You know what I mean?
But
Each
I just-
position is not great.
I mean, I don't think the Kassadin pick worked. There might have been something they were planning that they weren't able to show, or maybe Nemesis just had.
Nemesis
game
has
wasn't
played a lot
great.
of Cassin before, so there was a
But-
highlight clip that was released.
Yeah, but
about
also
it.
you have to say that Soaz kind of beat Buipo big
Definitely,
time,
yeah.
which is, for me, not unexpected. For
No.
me, Soaz was always the better top laner, and Buipo has showed himself to be strong, but Soaz has just shown, like, he did that over half a year, or just over half a year last year. Soaz has shown himself to be a good laner for
Yeah.
like billion years. so
Yeah, I
I
agree.
I think I said episode 0 that Soaz was like my
Underrated
player to watch or underrated player,
Yeah.
whatever. And for me, he's not disappointing. He did have, I think, so of the 6 games he's played, I'd say he's played well, like super good in 4, and then
Yeah.
2 have been
But since
suboptimal. I think it
we're
might
on
have been the
that
2 they
topic,
lost.
I want to call
But,
out his Kennen in the game they lost against Excel. And I'm not sure
Yeah.
whether it's a case of disrespecting his opponents or just not being able to focus in the game or just unlucky in the plays he did make. But there were a lot of times where he got what looked to be like game-winning Kennen flanks. I remember one at Baron where he looked like he just pressed all his buttons at once. Like he ulted, E'd forwards and flashed into a wall or something. And he killed one person, but if he'd have like, I could see, he had flash up, and I was thinking he's gonna flash this wall and get them all, and he just kind of didn't. He looked like he fumbled it, and there were a couple of
Yeah.
other plays where he's just sort of not hitting the mark with it, and it kind of speaks to the fact that they are 3-2 now, right? So or 4-2,
Well,
sorry.
they're 4-2, yeah.
And
So-
although that's still a very good score for a team that's expecting to, well, we were questioning last week whether they go undefeated or not. Or the broadcasts were as well. The LEC broadcasts were questioning whether they go undefeated, and I don't know who you. There's no. I think in a team when you've got players as good as this, you don't blame anyone, but you know who's not stepping up. I think it can be a bit of Soaz and Forbidden. You know.
Yeah, I mean, that's true, but it's hard to tell. For me, Soaz is still a great top laner, and
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Forbidden is yet to be seen.
The thing is, so he can go from the first game of the week, which was the one we're talking about, Kennen versus Urgot. He looked, as I've just said, not his best game. But then the next day, plays against what you should be a more important match because he's got a grudge on the line, right? And he's said that openly.
Yeah.
And he plays like a monster. He
I
really
mean,
had a
I mean,
crazy
that's
game.
also a former team for Forbidden, right?
Yeah,
And that's it.
exactly.
And then he kind of stepped up a bit as well.
Yeah.
So maybe that's what made them play well that game.
Yeah, so that's the thing in
Mm.
terms of a player of that caliber or experience knows that the game or your career's not over because you've lost that game. You know, they can reset and get into the next game properly, and that's what I think Soaz has got over at least Bwipo, but certainly a lot of the top lanes in the league.
Yeah,
Other
I
thing
agree.
I'd compare him to Vizicachi, because I remember I was watching something from Splice about they were saying how calm Vizicachi is and how nice it is to play with him, because Odoamne has a bit of a reputation, right, for being quite fiery, which isn't a bad thing, but you can see it in his play as well. But what they were saying is it's nice that we can have discussions, and he's calm, and he's like, it almost seems like a granted. It almost seems like a bit of a dig at Onoam though, and I'm like,
what did I read? Something I can't remember. It's definitely about. I think it might have been NA, where someone said like last season they like 20 minutes between each scrim result, like having like a mental breakdown.
That was for Bivin actually.
Oh, was that for Bivin?
Although
okay,
I'm not sure. I didn't read the article, but I was reading comments and saying that you shouldn't take the headline for what it is. But that said,
Okay.
we might as well talk about that, because we have talked about for Bivin just recently, about 5 seconds ago, and how he could be a liability for the team. How is he dealing with being back in EU? Is he still as good of a player?
So what the overall way I see it at the moment is, Bivin came back onto this team, like, so on H2K, before we went to the States, he was like the star mid laner. I think he got mid lane team of the, whatever it's called, team of the year, I forgot what it's called that year.
Yeah, it's interesting, but I still...
Like, they didn't make Worlds, but he played well.
Even then, I still wouldn't rate him as the same as he was on Fnatic. I still could notice a considerable decrease in his skill, I think.
Okay, but
but yeah, sorry, keep going your point. But,
I mean, yeah. So then he went to Clutch and was like clearly their best player. Like, well, at least for most of the time,
especially
their best
at the
player.
start of the split,
Yeah.
I noticed that a lot.
Like, he was kind of doing stuff, and I think this team, at least every week, it's not his job to be the star player like week in, week out.
Yeah.
For me, Hans Sommer is the star player of this team, the one they rely to carry on. So he just needs to do like good. He doesn't need to do amazing every week. He just needs to not get flashed, be there when he needs to be. So he's not getting given the same amount of resources he was on those other teams. So it's all right for him to not be performing to the same level, because he has these people around him who are the carriers. So that's the way that I kind of see it. He's not the Caps or the Jizuke who's like carrying, like expected to carry week in, week out. He's not there to make up the numbers, not by any stretch of the imagination.
Do you think the fact that he's now in EU is helping that? Do you think that the fact that he doesn't have to carry is helpful for him as a player? Because obviously you mentioned that article, right, where it was kind of hard for him. It's quite obviously hard for him to be in NA.
Right, so some people like are just born to be carries. You can see that. So like, if you look at like Doublelift, for example, there's never been a team that he hasn't just demanded like resource upon resource and then successfully done that. But then there also, I mean, you can look at Caps. Like, for the first part of the time he was on Fnatic, he wasn't a carry, but when he showed that he could carry week in, week out, he like almost always lived up to expectations. But then I think for most players, you don't want to have the weight of your team on your shoulders every week. It can't be a great thing.
No.
So if you can perform when you need to and be the rock when you need to be, that's a great balance to have. And I feel like on a team with Misfits, where you have so many good players, like that he's got that opportunity.
Yep, I think that's a fair point. So we'll put that one to rest as well. We've kind of diverted a bit, but we're going to go on to players that impressed this week. We've only got 2 of us this week, so maybe we'll just go.
Tell me we're doing this section this week.
Huh?
I've got to think of someone.
Yeah.
You can start.
So yeah, I would like a player that's impressed you this week.
Oh.
If you can think of one. I mean, I can go first if you want.
Yeah, go first. I'll think.
So, it's not the same as last week where I had 2 and I may or may not have flamed someone a little bit too much. However, this week should be a little bit more positive, and I kind of want to say that. Oh, hang on. Oh, I was gonna say Perks, but I think it's more of a combination of this week and last week. I think I will go with it because he's his champion pool is definitely surprising me. So I know a lot of people had questions about whether he was going to be a good AD carry or not. And I suppose this goes both ways. So the one part that's impressing me about him, or the player that's surprised me, is that on the one half his champion pool is great, and he obviously can play all these AD carries. He's up to date on the meta and how to do that. But if he's not playing ahead with his team, he still looks a little bit lost. So, and that's surprising to me that he's playing and has not like sort of learnt that yet. I remember I can't remember which AD carry was calling him out. I think it might have been it was Attila on the post game lobby.
What a surprise!
Yeah, no surprise there. But he was saying this is things that I've noticed as I've watched a lot of Pro League and I understand how positioning of AD not better than Perks even per se, but you can tell a good AD carry when you watch them because they always sort of play. Well, they never die randomly. They sort of like very strong laning, transition that into a strong mid game, take the right objectives and stuff. But Perks kind of just brawls a lot and plays with his mid lane, and it surprises me that he's still doing that in and they're still looking as good as they are. Because there were games, SK Gaming, we'll talk about just quickly, where him and Mickey, or particularly just him, got solo killed or in lane, just to random things. Like, for example, he sort of like took a really bad trade, got out of it alive, sort of just circled round the tower, like as if like for half a second, which basically sort of indicated to me to thinking he can stay at turret, farm safely or whatever for a few seconds as if he was like under no threat. And Dreams just sinks a fat Q on him from Braum and just kills him, and it was like,
oh yeah,
like what, like as if like that kind of experience, and the way he plays a lane is always aggressive. He doesn't seem to necessarily respect trades. Sometimes it works because he's very aggressive and people don't expect that. But on the other hand, it could be seen to bite them because G2 have got behind a lot recently, and the coach has specifically said they're not happy with it. And they're looking like in danger of not at least losing a game, but losing their composure, I think, more importantly, as a team. And I feel like that's kind of emanated from Perks. But, on the other hand, this is quite hard, because like, he's still surprised me about how many AD carries he can still play, and the fact that he looks solid on the picks, he just maybe doesn't still look quite solid on the roll to me. So, that would be my player of the week.
I see. Right, okay, I've just kind of gone out there with... are we alright to move on to my one, or do you want to discuss? Yeah. Okay, yeah. So, I've just been looking at some of the stats, and I think it's not necessarily been the best player, but this week went a bit under the radar, and that's Patrick from Origin, like formerly Sheriff. And like I remember saying, I don't think we've mentioned him much on the podcast over the last few weeks. So we were just saying like last year he was kind of a star point on a really bad team.
Yeah.
Like he was like all right or doing better than like what you'd expect from a team that wasn't working out. And this week, like the game they lost against Vitality, like he and Mithy were doing pretty decent in the bot lane. It was actually the top side of the map which kind of lost them that game, really, if in my opinion. And he wasn't too far behind on like CS. He was doing kind of all right. I mean, it's hard because I think Ezreal's really strong at the moment, and he's playing Lucian, who's also strong, but I kind of see Ezreal as stronger. I don't know, that's probably your more expertise on that one. But then on the SK game, he was really impressive. He went 8-1 and 7 in the end. And on the Kalista, I forgot her name for a moment there. And I've also quite liked the Kalista pick coming through, because it feels like the first time she's not either completely dreadful or completely broken. It seems like she kind of almost has a place in the meta right now.
So, Sheriff, as he was before, was a very good Kalista. Like, I think he was like pretty famous for it.
Yeah.
With how good he was on it. So it's nice to see him pick that up.
Pull him out, yeah. And he did extremely well in that game versus SK. That I almost said that one as like one of my games of the week, because that was
fun to watch.
I felt that was a great game, because SK got a great early lead with that self-made gank top. Do you remember where
Which
he came in with the
self-made
ult and
gang
then
top?
he
Which game are you talking about? You mean every single one?
yeah, but like he came in with the ult from Sejuani and got the kill, and then
Yeah.
the cold got the trade kill back, and then self-made like flash Q autoed him, and then the red buff killed cold as well, and like no one saw it coming, so that was great. But
It's,
Origin managed to come back in
yeah.
the end, so it was a good game overall, and I think Patrick played a big part in overall
Yeah,
in the
definitely.
win.
I,
So
I
I think
think
I think we
this.
haven't talked about him enough, and I think he's played all right.
Yeah,
Pretty
this is the
solid.
thing. So I think I can't remember. I don't have the list on me, but I'm pretty sure. I hope I did. I put him as my player to watch, the underrated player, because
I think
for
we
the
did.
start of this, I don't think I did I? But
No,
because I've always
no,
said.
I think you said like Abadag or someone.
Oh right, okay. Well,
I think you
either
said
way,
one of
I've
them
said.
was
Oh
the
no, I said
middle.
humanoid because he's got great hair, didn't I?
No, I don't think you did.
Okay, well that's all right.
I think
Because
you said
basically, my
Abadaga.
point, I always said that Sheriff, as he was then, and I hope he changed his name back because it was so much cooler. Like the AD carry, the Sheriff, like not Patrick. Anyway, the point is, I always rated him really well. As soon as he came onto HCK, he had some very strong games where he just completely kind of ignored, but he's still done like really well. But HCK still lost the game, and he was playing with Promiscu at the time. And I'm not gonna flame people who aren't in the league anymore, but he was about as good as my cat. So,
I'm not gonna do something I'm just about.
well, it's too late. If I say I'm not gonna do it, then you already know what's going on. But either way, now he's got a proper support behind him. He's got a proper team behind him. Well, not team. He's got a proper team behind him, and I really think that he looks incredibly good. Like I was watching just a little bit of this thing they were doing. Origin did like a Family Feuds thing, so they mixed their League and CS teams, and they did some like show matches. And he was playing Yasuo, and he just looked like ridiculously good. Like obviously he's against like people who haven't played the game before, but there's a level there's a level where you go from I'm playing Yasuo to I know this and the role, and you aren't gonna have a chance against me. And I know it's a very minor thing, but he's playing against some pros as well, obviously, because he's
Yeah.
playing mixed teams. And the more game, I just want them to get some sort of stride going, because when the rest of the team steps up and Alfari can have good lanes, like he did in this game, because he's playing Klepto Kennen, which is like a really good lane bully. If Nuke Duck can like basically, what will happen is if they all start playing well, rough like it doesn't have to be perfect, but if they all start playing well and they create some
Yeah.
pressure in all lanes, then all the lanes can play with pressure, and then it's up to Cold to step up, and then we can have like this crazy stuff. And I think it will all kind of start with Patrick, and he has the potential to do so, and he's starting to show it in games
Yeah.
like this week, even though they didn't have the strong, like they had a 1-1 week, but they had a pretty tough
He
game
had a good
against
solid win.
Vitality.
Yeah.
I just want to, so before we run out of time, I just want to touch on two things. So the first is Cold. I think just in this game, he played Kane, which is really interesting. I'll
Yeah.
come back to that in a sec. But the second thing I want to talk about afterwards is the Vitality versus Rogue game, obviously, because I just want to just touch on it at least a little bit. So we'll start with the Cold. This is just my point, I think that he really looked a lot better in this game. I can't really work out why. Like, cause
I mean, he said before that he has like enjoys playing the Kane, and I think he's the only other person I saw break it out last year in EU
so he
LCS.
definitely played it.
Oh, really? Okay, but I remember Cold also playing it, so I think he enjoys it. So maybe it's just a comfort pick as well, kind of thing. But he did. I agree with you. He did look good on this pick.
There's just a difference between when somebody's playing something they don't look comfortable on, where
Yeah.
they sort of they meander around the map. They sort of maybe try a gank or something, but when someone knows their champion, they do seem to have some sort of like dominance to it. Like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make this play here. I'm going to duck into this wall to get the healing to outplay you here. And there was a lot of that and a lot of proactivity from him, which is really good. So I hope he can kind of carry that forwards. I kind of speculate maybe because it's against a slightly low ranked team. Like, they have a bit more confidence against someone like SK rather than like the
quite possibly.
G2s they've been playing recently, or Vitality they've been playing. So
Yeah.
not too sure on that one. Unless you've got anything else to say on that, I just want to go on
No,
to the
that's fine.
Rogue and Vitality game. And I want to say how well Kikis played, because there are a lot of parts to this game. So, Kikis
Say that again.
played very well, considering Mowgli sat in his. I saw a comment on Reddit about it. Mowgli had sat in his jungle for a load of the game, like at the start of the game, basically denied him everything, and Kikis still. If you looked at the score lines, you'd think Kikis is the guy bullying him. Like he's doing.
Yeah.
He did so well, so proactive, made a load of things happen.
I mean, I can imagine this is a bit of a vendetta game for Kikis because
Yeah,
obviously
yeah,
the other 4 people, he was the only person that got replaced.
yeah.
Uh,
But so this is the comment
Yeah,
I saw on Reddit. Like this is a perfect example of why you shouldn't bully or your childhood, like whatever, standing up to their bully and just like beating the crap out of him, basically.
yeah,
'Cause
that's no.
and yeah, so outside of Kikis though, like Senkook's
Mm.
again starting to look more confident on an assassin, and
Yeah.
Prophet, as I've rated him, I think I might have put him as my player of the week last week, but if
Yeah.
if not, I should have done. He's looking
You
great,
did, you did.
and they're starting to get some sort of like semblance of a team there. And even Hiku looked pretty good this week. I mean, completely
He
forget
really
about
did.
the Vayne game he played because I don't know why they drafted around him, but this
So can I-
Lucian game looked
Yeah.
pretty
Looked
good. Like there were a couple of shaky
mean,
parts, but
Yeah, Attila was 0-4-0 at the end of the game.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to say something. It's quite funny because I told you earlier I was at a tournament on Saturday, so I didn't watch these games live, and I was like just browsing like
Yeah.
Reddit
Yeah.
casually, and I saw this game was like near the top of my feed. So I was like, okay, either one or two things happened. Something crazy happened, or Rogue won the game and it got high because that's a big upset. So I was
Yeah.
watching it like later on, and Rogue were pretty far ahead. So I was like, okay, now I know why it was top. It's because Rogue got this win they weren't expected to get, so that's what pushed it to the top. And then, of course, it ends up not being that at all, and we get one of the most vitality endings
so sad.
of all time.
Baron, they're
And-
pushing into the base, and they just at least two, I
I mean,
think three of them might
That
teleported back.
confidence from Vitality to just be like, no, we're gonna
We're gonna win.
push.
Thank you
yeah,
for
We
playing.
don't care. You've got Howard. You're gold ahead. Our AD's 0-4. Yours is 3-0. It's like
Yeah.
our jungler's actually. Yeah,
We don't want to
whatever, we
fight
don't care.
anymore. Let's
We're
just
just
end the
gonna-
game.
Let you have Barry and push up mid with
Yeah.
5 people. We're gonna
Yeah.
say 1-man bot and we're gonna win.
You do that, we'll go take the base. Like, I just feel so bad for Rogue because to beat some people that are technical. So we've said that G2 still technically the best team, and then below
Yeah.
them are Vitality and Schalke at 5-1 each. These are the teams you need to beat, and it looks so good for Rogue. Like they just kind of
Yeah.
outclassed them
Very
individually
unlucky.
about the team that wins by outclassing their opponents. So that's a really good
Yeah.
confidence boost if they won that game. But instead, it kind of almost doubles down.
Especially
on
as they
bad
just
feeling.
come off a loss to Fnatic here
Yeah.
at that point, or who still have only beaten them.
It's just
Um,
it must be extremely demoralizing, and I'd be really interested to watch this week whether it boosts their confidence so they play better this week, or whether it hits their confidence they just look like they've just fallen apart.
I mean, I
So,
hope,
I
hope
think
they
we
come
should-
out
can we-
and start doing well.
Sorry,
I hope it boosts them.
I hope it does, but because we need at least one tough question: is this going to be an upsurge, or are they going to plummet from here?
I mean, can they really plummet from here?
Yeah, they definitely can go 0-18. Is it gonna break the team mentally? Because I mean, look, Hiku.
No,
I'm
but
gonna
that-
say because Hiku in this game looks good. I was trying to explain to him. I was watching with people that don't watch usually, and I was explaining why I was flaming him. I was trying to show
Yeah.
things that he was doing in the game, but he kind of didn't that game. There were a couple of, like I said, missteps earlier. Like he just looked a bit clunky on Lucian with a few things and like some random stuff that didn't really make any sense, like flashing over a Raptor wall for a kill that was already there, just
Yeah.
not auto spacing like a pro AD carry would. But generally, like his aggressiveness, his plays were okay. So I was struggling to explain why he looked bad. So hopefully that'll translate into another week. What do you think
I mean-
about this team then?
Rogue.
Bearing that in mind, do you? Yeah, go on. I need an answer.
The way I see it is, this can only, if they get this right, this is a positive. But it could easily be they get this wrong and this is a negative.
Yeah, but we need a real answer.
For me, they're still the worst team in the league.
Yeah.
Regardless of how well they played against Vitality.
Yeah, that's fair.
And that's the unfortunate truth. I just would like to. Do you remember this? The play where it's like it just come in that ADCs are taking teleport last year, and I think Vitality was playing Splice or something.
I think it was Schalke. I know the one you're talking about.
Lost the team fight, or pretty much in their base, and then Attila.
Dragon, yeah.
Yeah, who was then mini Trupax, just TP'd into their base and took the game, won the game by himself.
Yeah.
It just reminded me so much of that, because they had no right to win the game, and they just stopped backs and
I
TP'd
remember
in.
because, Ezreal was upset was playing Ezreal over Elder Dragon, I can remember, But, okay, but for me, I reckon, I don't know, I'm going to go for a quick fire answer on this one.
He says while taking his time.
I'm trying to think. Yes, this is their confidence surge. I reckon this will be their turning point. I have a feeling. Actually, let's talk quickly. We're kind of out of time, but their schedule for next week is Origin, and then SK. So these are definitely two teams they should be able to beat.
Okay, for me, they need to go at least 1-1 this week.
Yeah.
For me, if they go 0-2, that is a problem.
I think they will. That's my prediction.
You think they will?
I think they will.
What about 2-0?
I think it's possible. And let's say they do. For a spicy end of episode prediction.
Okay, I think they go 0-2.
You think you go 0-2? Well, there's something to track for next week. unless you've got anything else you want to bring up, we can close.
No.
No?
I'm just excited for another week of games.
Yeah, they're always fun to watch. We love the LEC, and I really appreciate all the work all the casters do and stuff.
So good this year.
I think it's interesting, just as a final point, I guess, is that when we're talking about Game of the Week, and I said that the Origin story of them coming back is getting a bit dry, hopefully as weeks go by, we're gonna because they're doing a really good job at like developing storylines for new players and stuff, or redeveloping storylines for old players. So as we get further into the league, we can follow those storylines more, and hopefully we'll have more reasons to play games of the week, and hopefully we can extend them outside of the two teams that have taken up 4 slots of the 8, or no, of the 6. Yeah, 4 slots of the 6 potential teams to go for game of the week. So Vitality and Origin have taken up both of this week's, and then one of last week's, and then one of the week before. So anyway, so with that, thank you for watching, guys. Thank you for listening. Hopefully we'll be back next week with 3 of us. Maybe we'll have 4. Maybe we'll have 28. With absolutely no idea. And we'll upload on time as well, because we're recording on the wrong day because Tom had some issues. Like, I don't know what. Like, come on.
Don't flame him.
Sort it out, Tom. Mate, he's as bad as Hiku. Anyway, with that, goodbye. I shouldn't flame Hiku.